diehard Mets fan because I did go to Shea Stadium to see the Mets, and Joel Youngblood, right? I was about to say, yeah. He signed the baseball for me, Joel Youngblood.
Nice.
Pat Zachary.
Ooh.
I got a Pat Zachary autograph somewhere. Terrible. So to this day, I still have a hatred for the Yankees.
That's nice.
But good luck to the Yankees. I know they're up 2-1 in their series, one game away from clinching. And congratulations.
Hopefully they'll play your Tigers and crush your dreams again.
The only thing about the Tigers I don't know is I can't name you a player. Like, I don't know any of the players on the Tigers. I know they're Tigers, but I don't know their names. That's the one thing I'm lacking knowledge in, is actual names. I know they have that one guy that's a little heavy set that's been with them forever. That's a big fan favorite. He's still on the team.
Miguel Cabrera.
Miguel Cabrera. Is he still with the team?
No, he retired last year.
It's unfortunate because I remember him in the
Alan
game.
Trammell, Lou Whitaker, great combo, second and short.
Sounds good to me. Let's go Tigers.
They still play.
All right. Well, I hope everybody is enjoying their
Kirk Gibson, fist pumping.
Yeah, but he did. Yeah, but Kirk Gibson did that with the Dodgers.
I know. He doesn't play anymore. People who used to play.
I remember my dad waking me up, yelling and screaming from the living room when Kirk Gibson hit that home run. I remember him because he was still like a Dodgers fan because he was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, so he still followed and liked the Dodgers. And I remember sleeping and him screaming when Kirk Gibson hit that home run.
Yeah, this rookie named Ty Cobb they just called up. He's really good.
He was the Tiger, right?
Yep.
Rich history. Which, you know what? We're going to be talking some history on the show today because we had our master's class where we talked shock and awe and how can you still shock wrestling fans. And
What's up, bud? I'm tired of making chess videos. My chest is starting to hurt. Do one more, go towards the house. There's a fish chalet.
That's where we talked shock and awe and how can you still shock wrestling fans in 2024. I have my top 10 laminated list of the greatest shock and awe moments.
Laminated last night.
I laminated it last night.
Nice.
Of my shock and awe moments as a fan. So all my moments are within my fandom. So they're not moments from before I started watching or anything like that. They're all moments that I experienced in real time. And I'm avoiding obviously tragic moments. We're not going to talk about, the tragedy with the Benoit family or Owen Hart. We're going to stay with these are kind of shock and awe moments in pro wrestling history. And you could either go in history or you could talk about your own fandom. But I definitely want to hear from the nation of them giving us those moments. But before we get into that, Tommy, I do want to talk about some of the shock and awe that came down yesterday, and that's with AEW and NXT. NXT, with their move to CW, and this kind of went a completely different way than I thought. I thought with NXT moving to the CW that you might see a decline in eyes on that product and eyes in the ratings, Tommy, because you are moving to a new network. And I figured, man, that's tough to get people to move to a new network. But it hasn't been for NXT. Tuesday night, Tommy, for NXT, another very big rating for them. Over 874,000 tuned in to NXT. Unfortunately, history making for AEW and Dynamite. Dynamite had their lowest rated episode in Dynamite history with just 329,000. So, very, very interesting, Tommy, because I think right now, from looking at these numbers, that I think when AEW and WWE are going head to head, that the wrestling fan is choosing WWE over AEW right now.
If I go NXT had a quality debut, man. It had a quality show, and I'm sorry, I don't care what you're offering me. If it's a quality form of entertainment, I'm gonna come back. And they did. They followed up with the next show as good as the debut. It was also loaded with WWE main roster superstars, advertised to be there as well. Randy Orton, Jade, Bianca. They had a nice mix. They started off again with a nice surprise. So of course you're going to stay tuned because you want to see where this show is going. When it regard to AEW, man, anytime you're going to have a switch, not only on days, but it's also times. They went 9 to 11. I mean, we said it yesterday right before I went off the air. I knew they were going to take a hit. I would expect that number to go back, maybe double when they come back on regular Dynamite. If I'm the owner, or if I'm an AEW fan, I'm not as concerned because a switch of days always results in something low. I don't know if it is that low, but then it also goes to, I mean, AEW was not a bad show. There was some holes in it, but again, there was some quality wrestling, some decent angles, some furthering of storylines. It's just, I just say you're gonna get that drop off no matter what, and I expect it to rebound the next time they go up against it. As much as I'm touting the playoffs, I'm sure Tony Khan is not, because it's going to affect his programming. He doesn't have to worry about the NBA anymore, so it's a
I mean, Tommy, for me, and you know, and obviously I'm an AEW fan. I support AEW. AEW is great for pro wrestling. As me, you, and Bully said yesterday, that new deal when we had Chris Jericho on is just great for the growth of the sport. But as an AEW fan and also a host of Busted Open, Tommy, I'm very concerned about AEW. The stronger pro wrestling is, the stronger our show is. And AEW for a while was the hot product that everybody was talking about. Unfortunately, AEW, I would say over the last year and a half, has been very, very cold. And I'm trying to figure out exactly why. You just said that you thought AEW Tuesday night was a good show. I kind of disagree. I wasn't a fan of Tuesday night. And this show isn't delivering like it used to. And the TV ratings are dropping, and obviously the attendance is dropping. So I'm trying to figure out like why and how AEW could be better so that they're back where they were 3 or 4 years ago when they really did capture the hearts of the pro wrestling fan and everybody was invested in the show. It just feels like now the fans aren't invested in the show, and I'm trying to figure out in a way too, like a lot of people say, well, the WWE is the hot product right now and everybody's watching WWE, so maybe that's taking away from the AEW viewer. But I don't know if that's true either, because I think TNA, Tommy, TNA has been maybe the hottest that TNA has ever been in a very long time. Might I say maybe TNA right now is the hottest it's been in nearly a decade, if not more. So is the WWE being the cool product now taking away from AEW? Because I don't know if that's true or not.
A lot, right?
Yeah.
Great storyline. If I use TNA as an example to parallel with WWE, in TNA now the heels have heat and the baby faces are over. For Joe Hendry, Nick Nemeth, the Hardys. In the women's division, you have Jordan Grace. These are all people that have, you always say, who moves a needle? Well, this has happened. And then your heels. I could compare Alicia Edwards to Vicky Guerrero. The moment she opens her mouth, they're starting to say F the system and booing her where you can't talk. She now has a bit of a catchphrase, right? And the moment that people hear it, they're booing her out of the building. Josh Alexander turning heel. Yeah. And when I tell you, Josh Alexander being the face of the company for so long and then realizing there's a new, guy here taking his title and all that stuff, turning heel. Josh has done some amazing work. Then you also have like Frankie Kazarian has stepped up as a heel who's getting heat. Santana is becoming like this guy is the next it guy. So there's a lot of cool factors with that. If you think about the WWE, after John Cena leaves, you're banking everything on Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns has a great storyline. And then what do they do to combat those great heels of the bloodline? They, even with the Sami Zayn, you heat up your heels and then you have your baby faces coming up, and WWE is loaded with baby faces. So again, people pay to see the good guys kick the bad guys' asses. Your heels have heat. When that's kind of the formula of how it went, and then your good guys, your bad guys are having good storylines and then super quality matches. I said it yesterday. If you take a look at your segment, and I don't care what it said in the ratings, the Don Callis, Will Ospreay segment got your loudest reaction. When it gets your loudest reaction, then okay, how do I build for this? Because I know anything Will Ospreay is going to have is a good match. But now if I add personal stuff to it, like, MJF, when him and Ospreay had their back and forth banter, it was interesting. There's been no MJF on the show either. No. So I would look at it from that way. How can I heat up my heels? Maybe not go this we're the best wrestlers route. We have the best wrestlers and we're going to have the best storylines and take it from there. Dave, anything Will Ospreay touches turns to gold, but we already got Will Ospreay Ricochet. You can't just I understand why you do it, but if there's a formula and you don't feel your formula is working, sometimes you got to make changes, and you should get that from a sports analogy. There's teams that were supposed to make the playoffs, didn't make the playoffs. There's teams that supposed to go to the World Series, they didn't make the World Series, or football, the Jets, Robert Saleh. I'm sure they went to Aaron Rodgers and say, hey, Aaron, we got you this whole team. We put it together. What's not working? I think it's the coach. And we got to make a change.
Yeah, and I don't know what that change could be in AEW, because, Tommy, going by what you just said, you mentioned MJF, and we haven't seen MJF on TV recently, but I think MJF is maybe a part of what we're talking about here. MJF was a monster heel, that, you would go to the arenas and the entire arena would be chanting F you or shut the F up or, anything along those lines. He was somebody that we would say on this show all the time, the one true heel, the best heel in pro wrestling. Well, then they turned him babyface, and then they turned him back heel, and I think something was lost in translation. Now MJF is not even on TV. So you took one of your biggest heels, and maybe the biggest heel in pro wrestling, and you changed his character, you changed his personality, and I don't think it was for the better. Another one is The Acclaimed. The Acclaimed was so hot when they won the tag team championships in Queens at Grand Slam. That was one of the biggest AEW moments, and then they almost immediately were cooled off, and now it's at the point where The Acclaimed are barely on TV. That was your hottest tag team in AEW. You got to build on that, and unfortunately they subtracted from it. And then the big one that people bring up all the time, where he was close to being maybe one of the biggest baby faces in pro wrestling at the time, is Wardlow. It seemed like every time where Wardlow was on the verge to breaking out and being the biggest superstar in pro wrestling, something happened to knock him back down that ladder. You know, in pro wrestling, Tommy, you know this better than anybody. Lightning in a bottle. It rarely happens, lightning in the bottle. And I feel like AEW in its 5 years had several occasions where they had lightning in the bottle and they didn't capitalize on it. And I think I just gave out 3 examples. There may be even more. I'll throw out another one. Thunder and Britt. Like they changed history. You know, women's wrestling. The PWI's match of the year. Match of the year has never been a women's match. And Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa were able to do that, and then they quickly moved off of that feud. Like, I feel like AEW had lightning in a bottle, but for whatever reason, we're never able to capitalize on it.
Yep, there's a lot there. It's also, there's a lot of specific things. If, Thunder, Britt, there was backstage issues. There also, somebody got hurt in that. Listen, bottom line, heat up your heels. John Moxley and his group, make them heels. You have, if it's Bryan Danielson's last match, there is a nice build to it. I think I saw close to 7,000. Hopefully there'll be some more if it is his last match. You have baby faces that can regroup. I look at my heel side and I'm like, okay, who wants to be a heel? Who wants to be a baby face? And now we have to go. And then how? Like, how do we get you back to where we want to go? Not everyone can stay hot forever. You can't. At a 5-year point, there is a turning point for certain people. But yes, I do see how certain people dropped. The MJF thing, I disagree with you, where the fans turned him heel, and that was the obvious choice to go. When he came back and was the heel afterwards, not 100% sure I would have done that, but he did an amazing job of staying a heel. And listen, you also have to be somewhat of a heel in character. It's a whole other world, social media. Unfortunately, AEW also has a lot of negative behind it. That's also not their fault, where there's just haters, right?
Yeah.
And those haters are going to hate no matter what. I so enjoyed the Chris Jericho interview we did yesterday, and then I look at all the comments, I'm like, where is this from?
Oh, man, I have
and then when the ratings came out, dude, and then I saw this one video with you and Mark Henry, and I'm like, wait, Mark wasn't even there, and it was just like Chris talking about AEW in the beginning, and I'm just like, oh my God, just stop already. The business is better for AEW, and hopefully it can continue, and it will continue, but sometimes you just got to make certain pivots. You may, love your starting quarterback, but if your quarterback's not delivering, you may have to trade him or draft a new quarterback, or you make a change at the head coaching decision. So that's not going to happen. And listen, I don't think people give Tony enough credit for, he does love wrestling, and I know it's his vision, but I think he does listen to some people, because you do have these heels. Christian has been a heel the entire time and has been a great heel, right? So you have the players, it's just time to implement them. This whole thing with him able to cash that in, I tease that all the time because people don't want to see him win it. Maybe now's not the time because Moxley's so in that feud with Bryan. And then with that cash in, you ain't going to do it against Moxley because we're not liking Moxley. I think Moxley's doing amazing work too, and keep him a vicious heel.
Well, let me ask you this, Tommy, because I think you're the best person to answer this question. Because, and you just brought up the analogy of mainstream sports. This week has been a bad week for AEW. Last week was a great week for AEW. They announced the new TV deal. This week has been a bit of a disaster. They had their lowest attended Dynamite this week and their lowest viewed Dynamite this week. Is that an opportunity to hit, to hit the panic button a little bit when you hit rock bottom in attendance and viewership? Pro wrestling is ebbs and flows, but you just brought up, listen, we just saw with a record, a losing record for the Jets, right at the beginning of the season, they fired their head coach. They hit the panic button and they fired their head coach. If you're Tony Khan, are you hitting the panic button right now when you see the numbers as low as they are?
Queenie S says, leave at door. 201 buzzer 6,421. Please buzz 6,421 instead to open door and just...
I don't right now. Here's why. Because that Tuesday show is not indicative to the product that they're giving. And I know Saturday will be Wrestle Dream is one hell of a show, and I'm going to do a good number there. I use Saturday as my springboard to keep this positive momentum going. Saturday looks like a super duper strong show, and keep that moving forward so I can use that as momentum going forward. I would say maybe I want to go to some smaller venues just because of the negativity. You could go and you hear that it's not a good crowd, and then people will show pictures of what the attendance looks like, and that just sucks.
Yeah.
But if you look at the pivot that WWE just did, hey, this NXT brand is not selling out what we want to do. We went to a smaller building, we sold it out. A sellout is still a sellout. It's great to have on the marquee. And, that's kind of how if that was me, that's what I would do. And I would heat up my heels so my baby faces get more over. And I have all the players and all the pieces to make this a better television show, a better championship team, if I'm using my sports analogies continuing.
I think Wrestle Dream on Saturday is maybe the most important pay-per-view for AEW since All Out 2022. All Out 2022 was the first pay-per-view for AEW after Triple H took over creative for the WWE. Hit a grand slam with SummerSlam, and that was kind of like a change in course in the pro wrestling landscape. Vince McMahon steps aside, Triple H takes over creative. The first major event is that SummerSlam of 2022 in August. And I remember saying on this show, you feel the momentum shifting for AEW. I said, All Out 2022, they need to hit a grand slam, because you kind of felt it shifting. And you know what, Tommy? They had one hell of a show. Great main event between Moxley and CM Punk. CM Punk beating Moxley for the AEW World Championship. Then the press conference happens afterwards with Tony Khan sitting to the left of CM Punk and the AEW World Championship proned in front of him. He went on to completely shit all over AEW. And really, the stock dropped in that moment, and I don't know if they've ever been able to recover. I think right now, they've kind of shifted so low that they need a pick-me-up, and it can be Saturday at Wrestle Dream. I hope they hit a grand slam on Saturday, Tommy, and then starting on Monday on this show, we're talking so positive about AEW that maybe that trend is upward, and we see this shift. I think Saturday's pay-per-view, Wrestle Dream, is maybe the most important pay-per-view so far in the 5-year history of AEW.
Strong statement. Kind of agree. I would use it again as a springboard to continue that momentum forward.
Listen, Brian Danielson's last match could be on Saturday. We could be seeing the end of a Hall of Fame career on Saturday.
Who fills that void?
That's a great question. Who
you need to think of that?
I don't know. I look at the roster right now. I don't know who would fill the void of Brian Danielson. I really
Because
don't.
they've been pushing him so hard.
That's what makes it difficult, is that they're pushing somebody and they put a championship around the waist of somebody that either sooner or even or just a little bit later is going to retire, Tommy. Is that the right decision to make?
I mean, it was a great moment. I would have made that.
Ow! Fucking straps. Hey, buddy, I'll be right back, okay?